You want your agent to work on goals and tasks autonomously, but you don't know how. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly the system and steps that I follow to have my agent, in this case OpenClaw, work on tasks autonomously without me having to consistently prompt it. The biggest problem that people do when they are running these agents is that they are treating it as if it's a sort of back and forth conversation. That is the wrong approach and the wrong mindset you have when you go in and work with these agents, because that's the thing that separates these from actual LLMs or any other chat interfaces when you are using an AI. These are not simple chat language models. These are agents. They have intelligence, they have tool capabilities, and they can access previous context or even memory to execute tasks on behalf of you. That's what it pretty much means for something to be agentic. It can work on behalf of you. The biggest mental shift that I've had and that has changed my approach, how I use these agents, is that rather than prompting it to wait for it to do something and then come back, is to give it goals and then break down these goals into tasks. Once it has tasks, it can work on these goals across time through scheduled periodic check-ins throughout the day or scheduled wakes, and then it executes on the goals and the tasks that you have it set for. Once it achieves the goal, or it figures out how to achieve the goal and accomplish it, either you can prompt it and basically configure the AI so it can create more goals to achieve other kinds of goals within your business or your life, or you can just stop scheduling it to wake up. Now, I'm going to show you exactly in my computer how this all works so you can apply it immediately to your own setup. And in this case, in this video, we're going to be doing it with OpenClaw. We are in the computer. I created a quick slideshow with my own agent specifically for this video. So I basically prompted it, told it to create everything based on the outline it knows I had, and then boom, here we are. So I am going to be going back and forth between the slides and also the demonstrations inside my Obsidian that connected to my OpenClaw, so you can kind of see exactly the file structure you want for your agent, right? Or however you decide to do it. The whole idea here is just to kind of like get your brain rolling in terms of like the thinking process, so you can replicate it and perhaps apply it to your own setup, because everyone's setup is unique. I found this to work for myself. So let's just go back to what I said a moment ago. I said is that the biggest mistake that everyone online does with these agents, especially like now in 2026, we're moving into the year of agents where pretty much all these AIs and stuff can work and operate autonomously without you being there. So it's not fully autonomous yet. The magic really lies in the scheduled tasking and how you're setting up these cron jobs so they wake up on specific time intervals or say specific events, and then they go and execute specific tasks. Now, just a word of warning, I've realized that when you set up these agents to work autonomously, if you just have a general purpose agent, especially if you're using like a pretty weak or cheap model, it's going to hallucinate, do some stupid things. So it's probably better to opt for a more expensive or intelligent model, such as like a Claude model or something like that, because then it can actually do legit work for you. Whereas if you use say like a Minimax, a Kimi, something like that, I've noticed a lot of hallucinations and just busy work for just being busy. You know what I mean? And I think the best approach for this is going to be if you have very specific and narrow agents with their own goals and task boards, so they can operate autonomously and get things done exactly as you need it to be, versus just having a general purpose agent working inside of your business. So let's just go back to pretty much the main concept here and what I'm going to talk about. Right, so everyone has this back and forth dynamic with the bot, and they think it's just a simple chat model. You basically prompt it, it does something, and then it's supposed to respond to you. That's the wrong way to go about it. You want to set up the systems and the infrastructure in the beginning, so once you have the infrastructure right, you can pretty much build on top of it, because it's all very modular, especially if you have the right systems, the templates, the files, where you basically get the bots to create it for yourself. Then you have a strong base and foundation to work off of, so you can pretty much remove yourself from the whole entire process. You can pretty much go and do your own errands, your own tasks, things of that nature, and these things can pretty much work for you, right? You want to have the strong foundation from the beginning versus treating this thing as a simple talking companion, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is so these things can actually work and free up your time, so you can do things more cheaply, cost efficiently, fast. You don't have to be there. It can work for you 24/7. You can be sleeping, doing your other things. That's what these agents can potentially unlock for you, but right now you are treating it the wrong way. Now on the next slide, this is pretty much the message I'm trying to preach, that it should be working for you 24/7, and not just OpenClaw, but any of these other agents. Now, Claude, if you use Claude Desktop, you can pretty much schedule tasks on it. I'm sure a lot of providers are also going to be copying the same exact workflow. So if you have these other one-click deployments services where they offer OpenClaw, or if they have these features where you can schedule cron jobs baked into the platform, you want to be using them. But the most important thing in the very beginning is to have the right systems and infrastructure in place. I'll show you in just a moment, but I'm just kind of like making sure you're aware. Or if say you're doing this within your code base or something like that, because some people, they are creating their own OpenClaw with Claude or something like that within their own code base. They're running it locally. And then the thing that they're doing there is pretty much just hooking up with various different cron scheduling software providers online. So then when say a specific trigger or something happens, these scheduled tasks work in the cloud and get things done for you, right? My setup works as the following. I pretty much gave an agent, you can do this to a narrow agent, so it's more specific and it executes tasks flawlessly, or you can do it for a general purpose. I recommend in the beginning, have a simple general purpose agent so it can work and do tasks for you autonomously so you can kind of get a sense of it, and then narrow it down. Because when you have general agents executing and doing tasks for you, they tend to hallucinate and just make up things to do. From my own personal experience, I think it's better if you give narrow agents specific goals, specific task boards, and they're just really freaking good at doing that. Unless if you don't give it to them, they should be prompted in a very specific way by, like, say, an orchestrator agent or something like that to do tasks and workflows flawlessly versus, say, making a general orchestrator agent do everything for you. The way my setup works is, and I'll show you in just a bit, the way it works is we pretty much have Trello integrated into the agent. I use composio.dev. I hooked up a toolkit where it has access to my Trello. And then pretty much what I do there is I set tasks and goals, right? So the goals live inside of the actual root directory of my OpenClaw, which lives in the cloud. And then I have a tasks file inside of my directory where it's pretty much like a guidelines of how to actually use the goals and tasks that get put into Trello and the goals that I have written out inside Obsidian. So that is what the goals.md file is, and the tasks.md file. These don't come natively inside the OpenClaw infrastructure. I pretty much just created it myself because I'm trying to get these things to work and do things on its own versus me just prompting it all the time. You know what I mean? That's the whole point. You're trying to give it context. Also, it's very important if you don't already have this set up to have your own user.md file set up and the other basic like agents.md or memory.md setup, so it has some sort of general understanding of who you are, what it's doing, and what is its purpose. You know what I mean? Especially if you're creating sub agents in like an agents folder, you want to have those files filled out so they have a good, clear understanding without when they're being spawned in isolated sessions or something like that, that they know exactly what to do and how to go execute. So that's that. I use personally Discord because I like various different channels for the deliverables. I don't like having everything delivered in a single channel. I like things being delivered in specific channels. So if there's a specific channel for marketing, if there's a specific channel for alerts, if there's a specific channel for, say, projects or code being shipped, I'd rather have a specific channel so I know exactly where the deliverables are going. Or I'll alternatively have each sub agent or just a general purpose deliverable directory. So if it is doing any research or it is, like, say, I don't know, creating something within the file structure, I can see it there in the deliverables. So, and then also the last thing that you want is you want these things to be activated by cron jobs. So cron jobs, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's just basically a time clock or just like a scheduled session when the bot should wake up. Should it wake up every 10 minutes? Should it wake up every 15, 30? Should it wake up every hour, every 2 hours? You can set cron jobs for like these working agents while you're, say, asleep full on 24/7, or say specific time slots within the day, say like 8 a.m. to say 8 p.m. where it just works continuously every single hour and then it just does tasks for you. I prefer in the beginning, like if you're going to try this out, try it out so it's like working during hours you are by the computer, so you can kind of see what it's doing every single hour, every single few minutes or whatever, and then you can kind of see like the deliverables and how it's working. I suggest in the beginning just do it every hour. You can kind of see, it gives you enough time to review and then adjust it as it go. Okay, so now let's actually go into the Trello board. I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. So inside, but you know what, before we even go there, I want to show you inside what's going on inside of the Obsidian. So I created a few files here. So here is a tasks.md file, here is a goals.md, and the way this works is very simple. I'll show you right now. So the tasks file that you want is you want it to pretty much be a general guideline of how to access the tasks. So anytime the agent spawns and then you feed it a prompt for the cron job inside OpenClaw, you want to feed it to be like, hey, before you start anything, check out tasks.md, check out goals.md. This is what that is, this is what this is, and this is how to use the Trello board, okay? Because it has access. You've given it skills, it should know how to access it, all right? This is not just like a basic purpose setup video. This assumes that you've given it various different tools, and then once it has access to these tools, it can do and do these more advanced features with the system. So assuming you've created this task.md file, it's pretty much just the conventions, the naming conventions, how to actually mark and view your file. So that the different types of cards you have, whether it's like to do, in progress, for review, approved, blocked, done. How do you want the naming conventions to work? How do you want the names to look like? How do you want the systems to be labeled and stuff like that? How do you want the descriptions to be inside of the template? So like you want to put all like these general rules here for the bot to follow, right? You don't want to overinflate this thing, just like the most important thing. So this thing here is roughly like 3,500 characters, not bad. And then you also want to let it know how to access the scale for the specific Trello board, or if you're using, say, something else to manage your tasks, where to access it, right? And then one interesting thing I didn't do here, but what I like to do is that after every single session, what the agent does is it completes, say, 2 to 3 key critical tasks. And then at the end, it updates the current day's memory file and be like, hey, this is what I did. These are the things that are delivered. This is where exactly it's delivered. And then here's the next stuff I'm going to work on. Or is there anything else I should work on? Or it notifies me and tells me, hey, I don't have anything else to work on. Do you want me to continue working? Or do you want me to find something else to do? I think that's also a good practice where you prompt it. And I'll show you just a bit in the prompt, but it prompts where it also checks the current days or previous days memory log, depending if the current days exist. And then it pretty much knows, okay, here's where I left off. Here are all the things I did, and this is what I can potentially do right now. Now, in the goals.md file, this is basically the goal, right? This assumes you already filled out the user.md, the memory.md, the goals.md. The whole point of this is to basically give it goals and tasks to optimize for and achieve, right? If you didn't give it access to certain key data that it needs, you want to prompt it, like you'll see in the prompt for the cron prompt, that if there are certain things that don't exist, what you need to do is to create the tasks for me to unblock you. And when I say me, I mean like you as the owner, like you as the user, that the companion that this thing is working with, because you want this thing not to just come empty-handed to you. You want it to invent tasks and things that are actually going to move you forward. Especially when you use more intelligent models, these models can anticipate your needs and figure out exactly what you need or what they need to do in order to help you move the ball forward. You don't want to just creating markdown research files all day long inside of your own directory. You want it to actually creating you real legit deliverables, whether it's like automations, whether it's completed email marketing workflow systems, whether it's actually drafted newsletters, things like that. You know what I mean? Retrieving your own, say, social media metrics to get some more views or discovery online. You want it to give it enough autonomy where it understands that meta high level goals and then how to achieve it. So here we have just this example of a fitness studio, right? A random fitness studio. And the goal is to get to $25,000 a month. Here are like the quarterly targets. Here are the priorities that we have for the month. So if you're doing like your own goal setting and stuff like that, you want to basically have like these general different headlines or just like headings and what the focuses should be, right? Like what do we want to focus on this week? What do we want to focus on in general? What is like our current revenue breakdown? Like what are some metrics in our business, you know what I mean? And like what are you looking to optimize? So the more information you provide here, the more you update this. So it's not just a static file that just gets ghosted in your directory, but there's actually some sort of real purpose and substance behind it. The bot is going to better know, or the agent is going to better know how to operate and work within what you've given it context to. Now, if we go into Trello, these are just some examples of, say, some mock data that I created for the bot to actually, I keep saying bot, but for the agent to, say, work off of. So imagine that we gave it a scheduled task for every single hour to wake up and do things. So currently, let's say it's in the process of building out this onboarding package, right? Or it's batching fill content for week 3 and 4, right? It's ideating based on workflows. Maybe it's blocked. I know there's no board here that says blocked, but like in my primary one, there's like a blocked board. Sometimes what the agent will do is just put tasks here. It says it's blocked, and then pretty much I have to unblock it. Or it just tells me why is it blocked. Is it because we ran out of credits for an API? Is it because there's some sort of error happening? Is it because it can't do something? So you can pretty much unblock it and it will message you in the chat exactly why is it blocked, you know what I mean? And then these are like other to-dos. So every time it wakes up on a scheduled session, depending on how many tasks you prompt it to do, I suggest maybe 1 to 3 in the beginning, maybe just 2, because the more you inflate it with things to do, it may mess up on something because there's too much context and tokens being generated, especially if you're doing super heavy tasks like coding or something like that. If you spawn a single isolated session, it may, like, I don't want to say break, but just decrease in performance. That's why it's better to have a narrow agent with these individual systems. But in my opinion, start with 1 to 2 tasks. It can wake up on every session here and there, and they can start working on things. Okay, like set up the email automation, you know what I mean? And then it'll start breaking down exactly how to set up the email automation. And then at some point, it can even create it for you entirely, depending on if the API that you've hooked it up to can do that. You know, I mean, not every single API provider can do automations, but if you're using a provider which enables something where the bot can hit up with the API, then you can have your own API, or what's called your own automations launched and shipped. You know what I mean? So my bot, for instance, it has access to Vercel, so it can ship code to Vercel and then pretty much make it live. So for instance, like this whole slideshow, this is all live and shipped by my agent. You know what I mean? It has that tool. So like if I'm prompting it and I'm saying, hey, like this week I want to make 5-7 videos about XYZ topics, make sure every single day there's a deliverable shipped in Vercel so I can actually do something about it. That's how you will kind of want to treat these agents. So every single session it'll work and do these things. It'll let you know if it's doing. So like if it's started task, the task will be here. And then if it's completed, it'll get moved to done, or it'll get moved to blocked if there's something that's blocking it. Now we did just kind of go in pretty deep in terms of like how it all works, but these two files are super important and super integral to the agentic workflow here. You need to have the agent access some sort of task list or like task guideline, how to manage and work with tasks for different conventions, things like that, where to actually access and do the tasks. In the beginning, if you just want to be quick, you don't want to hook up any tools, just do it all inside of like a markdown file. But I don't recommend that because very fast it's going to get messy in there. Sometimes the charts can break. In my opinion, I think it's just better to hook up a productivity board like Trello, something super easy, and then it can manage everything from there. And then where the goals come in is it first looks at the goals and then it breaks down the goals into individual tasks, or say a big task, which can then be broken down in future sessions to complete it, depending on how you specify the prompt. If the prompt you've specified and let the bot know that, hey, this is way too big of a task, let me break it down first, it'll create subtasks of that big primary task. You know, I mean, that's just like a guideline I suggest, because then these agents have better workflows. And the way this all gets delivered is through Discord. The way I have this all getting delivered and shipped to me once it's done on every single cron session is I have specific channels for this to happen. So in my case, I created a demo channel here where you can just launch the agent, copy the channel ID, and paste it into the scheduled cron job for it to give me the deliverable. Now let's actually talk about quickly scheduling a cron job so we can have this thing activated and working for us. What you want to do is go into your OpenClaw, and then you want to go to cron jobs, and then you want to set up a new cron. So for this, what we're going to want to call it is, say, daytime, or I'm just going to call it something random, daytime worker, and then you want to reference the agent. So if you're doing like a specific agent, if you have specific agents, reference the specific agent here. We're just going to reference the main agent here. You can give it a description so you know exactly what this thing is doing. And then what you're going to want to do is to give it a scheduled time. In my case, if I just pasted this expression here, this pretty much means every single day in PST time, if I set it here, it's going to wake up at 8 a.m. and work till 1 p.m. Every single hour is going to be scheduled, okay? You can do it to a different time, whatever it is, whatever you want. I just like to schedule it through times I like to work. And then under execution, what you want to do here is you want to make sure this is in a isolated environment. Should you have a timeout interval? I suggest so, because if you don't, because then this thing will pretty much run and do stupid things for you. I suggest at least 20 minutes, something to start. But if you make it too short, the problem then there is that it can be in the middle of doing something and then it just stops. So try somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes in seconds. And now the prompt. Let's get to the actual prompt. So this is just an example of, say, a prompt I have. It's very thorough, it's very specific, and it pretty much tells you exactly how this agent should work. So what is this agent? It's just an autonomous business operator. It moves the ball forward. You tell it the context, like read these files first before you start anything, today's memory, pull out the Trello cards. You should tell it how to access it, right? Should it exclude any tasks? Should it include any tasks? What should it focus on? You pretty much want to tell it like what kind of queues there are. So it's a to-do, in progress, approved. you always want to reference, you always just want to make sure it references the Trello, so it's not just hallucinating or just creating tasks out of thin air. This tends to happen when you use a weaker model, but nonetheless, good to have. And then here, as we kind of go, you can kind of see like different headings. So you can kind of just like read here, different priorities we have, phases of what this all looks like, different categories of work. I think this is actually really interesting. When you have different categories of work, it at least gives the agent some sort of reference of what it can work on. Content support, client delivery, systems building for its internal operations, technical work like coding, self-improving itself, internal improvement, building out its own skills, prospecting, especially if it's like research for something, setting different tasks. So like this is what I mean by like breaking down things if anything's too complex. And then here I prompt it and say, hey, pick the highest leverage thing to focus on. And if you want to go even deeper, what we can do is pick 2 to 3 things that are the most highest leverage for the session and then ship it. Do or start something that gets the work done, you know what I mean? And then, you know, I specify that here. And then I specify exactly what counts as done. What is the definition of done for this agent so it knows exactly what is done? There are deliverables presented. There's code shipped. Something is built. There's some sort of content created. There's some sort of update inside of a CRM. You want to be very specific about all that. And then also be specific about what doesn't count as done. And then I mentioned earlier, but you want to get the agent to pretty much update its own memory file. You want it to report to you where specifically, in this case, the channel on Discord. And then you just want to give it like a little prompt of like, okay, hey, this is exactly what I did, any blockers, whatever. And then it just gives me the final message inside of Discord. So when you actually create the agent, you pretty much can just copy this whole entire prompt, paste it inside the cron, and then you specify where do you want this delivery to be. In my case, I want it inside the demo channel. I'll paste it here. And you just want to make sure it says Discord if you have your channel set up. I'm going to add the job. So daytime worker is enabled. And I haven't ran this thing yet. But here what you would do is you just run it, right? So once you run it, it'll actually start doing something in a session. And there you have that. Once that is up and running, you can pretty much just run it every single hour or whatever you feel comfortable with, and it's going to be doing tasks for you. Now, earlier I did kind of hint and mention, but it's a better practice to have this individual or this system of like tasks.md and goals.md, like these file structures where pretty much these agents can reference their own goals and tasks if it's very specific to a sub-agent. So if you have a research agent that's getting launched every hour or something like that, or an outreach agent on specific time intervals, or say content agents, they have their own individual task boards so they can reference it, and then they can just purely focus on focused environments versus everything just kind of being everywhere. I tend to notice that gets pretty messy over time, especially if they run out of tasks. Then it's just best to have, in my opinion, separate boards for these sub-agents. And that'll be all for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this kind of shed some light in terms of like how to think about agents and how these things can actually really become more autonomous in your own personal lives. So if you found value to this, I'd like you to check out my newsletter. It's on my website. You can opt in. It's free every single week. I'll be sending out super valuable information around AI. On top of that, if you want more content like this, subscribe for more, or just comment down below and I can kind of share more things about what I'm working on. If there's something specific, I'd be more than happy to make a video about it. So see you in the next one.